Good morning, and a good Monday morning in May, in late May. Today, I'm going to just talk briefly about the swords of May. What we've got here is this is the sword that Saint Constance uses in her role as priestess in the Gnostic Mass. It is also my magical sword. And I write all about it in, Homemade Magic. I tell the story of why I didn't make this sword. I didn't go out and dig up the ore and make the metal. No, I got it after a traumatic series of events. I bought it from an antique store. It is a classic Knights Templar commandery sword of that branch of Freemasonry. And I especially like this one because it is a bit shorter than many of them of this era. I suppose this is about 120 years old, maybe 150. But it's just perfect for Constance because as priestess, she has to pull it out. And a longer one would have been inconvenient, awkward. It still has a lot of the sort of gilding on it with wonderful Knights Templar kind of imagery and things like that, which make it absolutely perfect for magical use, especially in an organization such as Ecclesia Gnostica Catholica or the OTO. It's a perfect ceremonial sword. And look at the knights. All those Templar knights, okay? And we could probably actually look up the date of this sword. It belonged to the knight commander at the time, whose name was, let's see here, can we see it? I'm taking too much time with this nonsense. Walter F. Doran. So I toyed with the idea of using Walter F. Doran as a nom de plume or a nom de guerre, whichever way you want to look at it. But if you look at the handle, and this is either bone or ivory, and I'm not sure even the antique dealer that sold it to me was a little bit careful to make sure that I knew that he thought it was bone rather than ivory. But you can see the WFD for Walter F. Doran on it. So it was a special kind of thing. And look at that knight resting at sunset in front of his conical tent. Anyway, I talk all about what a magical sword is and perhaps what it is not, and I write about it elsewhere. But just today, because it's the 22nd, I just wanted to speak briefly about the swords of May. Okay. Now, if you're a tarot reader, or if you try to read tarot cards for yourself, I can't worth a I lie to myself. I can't read my own tarot cards, but I read for others because I don't mind being rude. Swords are difficult, okay? You got wonderful cards, love and pleasure and happiness, and with the cups, and but the swords, you got sorrow and interference and failure and all sorts. They seem difficult, at least on the surface, and indeed they are. But that is pretty much 1/4 of our life is sword type stuff that's going on. So I'm just going to read a couple things about the sword cards that belong to today. Okay, and it's something that if you're on a magical discipline or some kind of a program where you keep a daily diary and things like that, it's fun to as long as you're putting the date and hour of your diary entry, to put what tarot card goes with the day you're in, and sort of see how your life unfolds throughout this ever moving, ever flowing, ever fluid process of the tarot cards as you go through the year. So first of all, the court card that goes with the time period May 11th through June 10th, which is, we're pretty much right kind of in the middle of that, is the Knight of Swords. Okay, and the Knight of Swords is also a I Ching hexagram that is called duration. That's number 32. And number 32, duration, I Ching hexagram's got all sorts of stuff that goes with it. It's one of the I Ching hexagrams that use the metaphor of courtship and marriage as illustrative of the forces that are at work in that hexagram. And in this case, it would be the man has gotten down on his knees to ask his bride-to-be to marry him, and it's her decision, and she said, yes, I'll marry you. And then he gets up off his knees, but it's a situation where he may have gotten up off of his knees, but she's still in control. So it's a very, very wonderful sort of soap opera-y analogy for the forces that hexagram represents. But be that as it may, it also just represents that 30-degree period from 20 degrees Taurus to 20 degrees Gemini. Okay, now that's a 30-degree period. Now 3 small cards live inside this card. Okay, and those small cards each represent a 10-degree period or a decan within that. And it just so happens that the first decan of Gemini, 1st through 10, first decan, May 21st, that started yesterday, to May 31st, is the 8 of Swords. Now the planetary mix allotment of that, of course it's Gemini there, but the planet Jupiter is assigned to Jupiter in Gemini. So yeah, it's not all that bad of a mix. Jupiter, everyone's happy to see Jupiter show up, but it's also an 8, which is very low on the tree of life and sort of off balance. So it's got some difficulty in it. So it's called shortened force. Now there are a couple of Goetic spirits that are assigned to that same decan, One of it is Amon, which we might talk about here in a second. But that's the card. So here are those two cards, okay, that go with today. This one lives inside this one. Now, Crowley's and the Harris deck have a guy that looks like that. Knight of Swords. Wow. I don't even pretend to compete with that artwork. I may have the dates written on there, but wow. Yeah, well, I'll talk about that in a minute because I'm going to read right out of the Book of Thoth there for you. And here is the Eight of Swords. See the Jupiter there? See the Gemini there? Crowley calls it interference. Now, either one of these, shortened force and interference, aren't immediately catastrophically bad. Okay, well, as swords goes, a little interference is better than ruin or or something else. So it's not too bad. When I first was drafted to, literally drafted to write this book, Understanding Crowley's Thoth Tarot, and I agreed to do it at a convention, and I tell this story all the time, at a book convention in Chicago. I went back to my hotel room. It was very dramatic. There's a thunderstorm going up outside my hotel window. And I was trying to get some encouragement. Don't you sometimes get out your tarot deck? Oh, I want to be encouraged. I want to be reinforced. I want my prejudices pandered to with a tarot affirmation. And I did it from my own deck, shortened force. Okay. And, you know, the project was characterized by just pretty much what you would expect, that it'd be like pulling teeth, the entire project, and never intellectually satisfied with it. But as it turned out, this is probably my most successful thing that I ever had published. Anyway, so I'm going to read you what Crowley has to say about this Knight of Swords, first of all. Well, I'm going to read you what I said there. Here it is. This is what I'm going to say about it. Excuse me, I'll quote Crowley, but 20-degree Taurus to 20-degree Gemini, May 11th to June 10th. It rules the 7 of discs, the 8, that's the first decan, the 8 of swords, that's the second decan, and the 9 of swords. Okay, the 7 of discs, the 8 of swords, and the 9 of swords all live inside this guy. Original titles: The Lord of the Winds and the Breezes, King of the Spirits of Air, King of the Sylphs and Sylphides. His crest is a winged hexagram. These are sort of the classic Golden Dawn devices that are associated with it. Winged brown horse, driving clouds, dark brown sword. His hair is dark and his eyes are dark. Now, I quote a letter from Harris to Crowley. "I've done as you suggested to the swords. Thank you, Mr. Crowley. You were quite right." I put that there because she very seldom admitted that. Okay, she was She gave as good as she got from Crowley. Swords is the suit of air, and as we begin our examination of these cards, I must point out the design motif that appears repeatedly in all the cards of this suit. Wings. Okay. You might not think you're seeing wings there, but you are. You might not be thinking you see wings in the background there, but you are. Harris incorporates angular and highly stylized wings everywhere. They may not always look like wings, but that is what they are. Beginning with the Knight of Swords, we see what appears at first to be 4 propeller blades spinning atop his pointed helmet. They are actually 4 triangular wings sprouting from his back. They are transparent and veined like those of a dragonfly. Perhaps there are only 2 wings that are moving so fast they appear as 4. Then I asked you to take a look at the Queen, the Prince, and the Princess of Swords and locate all the wings on those cards too. And I asked you to look at all the small cards and see the wings in the background of the small cards of the suit of swords too. These stylized wings, some balanced, almost pinwheel in form, some twisted, broken, stretched, and distorted. It has been suggested these figures appear to represent magical sigils drawn from planetary kamiyas or magical squares. Anyone familiar with the extent, or I should say the limits, of Lady Harris's magical education at the time would not even suggest such a thing. The Knight of Swords is fire of air, suggestive of a violent wind. Now, you could say this about any time period in the world, but I tell you, we've had wind events in this location that are far from normal. Anyway, we'll see that from now until the duration, I guess. The Knight of Swords is fire of air, suggestive of violent wind. The general divinatory meaning of the card can be summed up in one word: attack. The moral qualities of a person thus indicated, Crowley warned, are activity and skill, subtlety and cleverness. He is fierce, delicate, courageous, but always the prey of his idea, which comes to him as an inspiration without reflection. Impulsive, sometimes dangerously impulsive. Famous Knights of Swords include Baron von Munchausen, I don't know if you know very much about the Baron von Munchausen. I only know that he was like George DeSantos on steroids. He was a liar. He was a liar's liar. But they were more than lies. They were fantasies. They were, as Mark Twain would say, they were whoppers. How he went to the moon, and I guess he had a lot of money, so he didn't get really institutionalized and stuff. But he's a famous liar. Knight of Swords. Arthur Conan Doyle was the Knight of Swords. Pope John Paul II, and Malcolm X, Queen Victoria, John Wayne, John F. Kennedy, Marilyn Monroe, and Cher. They're all Knight of Swords. Maybe you are too. And the colors are blues, yellows, white, cirrus clouds dominate the card as they do the Queen of Swords. Okay. That's my comments from the Thoth deck on the Knight of Swords. And for the Eight of Swords, Interference. Let's take a look at it there. And remember, this is May 21st to May 31st. So kind of from now to the end of the month, interference. If this was a predictive thing, I'd say, well, you know, you're going to live through it, but it's going to be a pain in the ass. Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter, Gemini. 0 degrees to 10 degrees Gemini, May 21st to May 31st. The original title was The Lord of Shortened Force, and that's, I've kept the original titles to most of these. Golden Dawn model had 4 hands appearing from the clouds, each holding 2 swords, points upward. All the points touch near the top of the cards. The hands issue 2 at each bottom angle of the card. The rose is reestablished in the center. Okay, now Harris has really departed from that classical design. The Prince scale for Hode is 8 on the Tree of Life, are russet red. And that's why on our card we've got the russet red. Okay. 4 scales of color for Jupiter are violet, blue, rich purple, bright blue, rayed yellow. Now look how Harris tried to get most of that incorporated in the background and the devices over the background. She really did a pretty good job there. 4 scales of, okay, the formula is Hode, which is 8, of swords. Swords are Yetzirah, plus Jupiter, plus Gemini. So that's the formula. You put all that stuff together, they all equal generally interference or shortened force. Harris outdid herself in strict adherence to the color scales of this card. One would not expect a marriage of these colors to appear in art prior to the psychedelic blacklight styles of the 1960s. The blades of the swords seem to actually glow in the dark. As in most of the small cards of this suit, the swords appear upon a field of stylized wings, here looking almost like pinwheels. Actually, the card is not as bad as it looks or its title implies. Jupiter in Gemini indicates an element of luck in intellectual pursuits. Hode is the sphere of Mercury, who rules Gemini, as it does to the 8s of the other suits as well, however. Hode's imbalanced and lowly position on the Tree of Life throws a wet blanket on what otherwise might have been a fortunate coupling. And if you're not following the Hode thing, Hode is right, that one right there, number 8. It's low on the Tree of Life and it's unbalanced. And even though it's got all sorts of other kind of good Gemini and Jupiter-y kind of mercurial things going for it, that lowness on the tree of life and that imbalance is throwing a wet blanket on its otherwise fortunate factors of its equation. There's not enough mercurial energy left to put up much of a fight. And the suit of swords, and in the suit of swords, fighting is what it's all about. Crowley says the will is constantly thwarted by accidental interference. I hope all of our experiences here in the next 2 weeks goes a little better than that. The Eight of Swords does not show us much patience or persistence. If influence is to be overcome, those qualities will need to be developed and introduced into the equation. Otherwise, everything will most likely tend to interfere. Okay. That's what I comment on Crowley's comments, I guess, on that. One little thing, if you're magically inclined, okay, or a magical practitioner, or you practice or experiment with, or are fascinated with Kabbalistic magic that deals with 72 what they call angels of the divided name, the angels of the Shemhamferish. Umabel is the first 5 degrees of this decan, and Yahel rules the second 5 degrees of the decan. But we've also got 2 spirits of the Goetia. Ammon and let's see, I'm not sure. I've been reading the Ammon and Sabnok. Sabnok is spelled so many different ways, even Savanok. So now, the night spirit Sabnok has all sorts of arcane, wonderful duties and talents. His office is to build high towers, castles, and cities, and to furnish them with armor. Now, you can put that in terms of your own life, and that could come in very handy. But Ammon is very interesting, and that's the one I kind of wanted to talk to you today about. He's number 7. He's a marquis, great in power, and most stern. He appeareth like a wolf, with a serpent's tail vomiting out of his mouth flames of fire. But at the command of the magician he putteth on the shape of a man with dog's teeth, beset in a head like a raven. Interesting looking guy. Or else he looks like a man with a raven's head, just simply that. He telleth all things past and to come. That's a handy skill in divination. He procureth, here's an odd one, he procureth feuds and reconciles controversies between friends. I want you to think about that contradiction in his skills. He procureth feuds and reconcileth controversies between friends. In my opinion, that tells us that the type of forces, the type of natural forces that we're dealing with in Solomonic magic, when you whip up a spirit of the Goetia, The reason the spirit potentially has the ability to fix your problem is because the spirit is your problem. And your problem can only be fixed by having it fix itself. That's why spirits are reluctant to help you, because it's what they think they should be doing for you. Oh, I'm very successful in creating this problem for you, and you act like you don't appreciate it. Are you trying to get rid of me? No. You've got the problem because the spirit is functioning in such a way that to you it looks like a problem. But the spirit can fix the problem when brought under direct control and direction of the magician. I thought that was very interesting. And if a person was inclined to address personal issues through Solomonic magical means, things like that, in this 10-day period that's coming up here, it would not be unreasonable to at least consider, hey, I've got these problems going on. What do I do? What do I do to fix it? What can I do to squirt WD-40 into the wheels of this sort of natural cycle we're going through? But anyway, not that I would do that or suggest anyone else does, but it's something you can think of when you consider the fact that if you've been studying this stuff and practicing this stuff for 10, 15, 20, 25 years, you've already got a valuable bag of magical tools. And sometimes it's time to look into that bag of magical tools and see which one you might want to dust off and apply to the issues that are currently facing you. That's my words of wisdom for today, and that's my comment on the swords of May. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.